Good evening and welcome to the October 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Brookfield Zoning Commission being held in Town Hall Room 133. If you all please rise so that we do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We're going to ask for the members of the Zoning Commission to please introduce themselves, starting with my far left and working our way to the right.
Kurt Timmerman, alternate.
Gerald Pratt, regular member.
Andrew Kames, secretary.
Gary Getz, chairman.
Vishendra Kumar, vice chairman.
Phoebe Holmes, regular member.
Mike Lucian, alternate.
Gwen Arment, alternate.
Thank you. Item 1B is the review of the minutes from the September 22nd meeting. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes? Not hearing any, I'd entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes of the
September 2nd?
September 22nd?
22nd, I apologize.
Meeting as submitted.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Mr. Komar has seconded Mr. Kames' motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Item number 2, enforcement. We'll ask for the zoning enforcement officer's report with Mr. Lawler, please.
Sure. 107 Stony Hill Road, the Nassar property. I did send a notice of violation because I did observe construction equipment back there, trucks and stuff. He sent him a notice of violation on 9/22. He did come in the office on 10/6, explain to me that I guess the state DMV had suspended his licenses for moving the trucks. I guess they didn't meet the DOT requirements, so currently the vehicles are stuck right now. He can't move them. I also heard the story that his brother was injured in a severe accident in Bethel where a trench collapsed on him. Regardless, the vehicles can't go anywhere because they're not permitted through the state, otherwise they'll get fined. But right now, he's waiting for that time to elapse, and then he'll get the vehicles out of there. He does have a yard in Danbury, he did indicate to me. That's where the vehicles will be going once he can get them on the road again. Also, we talked about the retaining wall. He's in the process of working with an engineer on doing a land swap because that retaining wall, part of it's on the neighbor's property, so they have to do a land swap this way both properties are in compliance. So I'm still watching this right here, and again, it's been on the report for a while, but it's in progress, I guess you could say, finally. 81 Clearview Drive, Costello property, the stormwater management. Again, there's been no update on anything on this one. I won't sign off on the CO for the property until he complies with my requirements, which he has not done yet. So, he does not have a CO at this time. So, 47 High Ridge Road, that's on the blight list also. Salas property, that's the town attorneys have been involved in that. I don't have an update on that, but when I talk to the town attorney next time, I'll get an update as to where that is with him. 31 Green Knoll Drive, McGovern property. This was the earthwork and grading. Complaint came in about it. He was here at the last meeting on 9/22. I know the commission's going to discuss this tonight, so we'll continue this, I guess, till afterwards. 11 Candlewood Acres Road, Risco residence. Complaint came in from the neighbor that there was a storage container parked by the edge of the road. It's been there for over a year. She's complaining that she can't get out of her driveway. So I sent the owner a notice of violation, told her, it didn't comply. It needed to be moved off the right-of-way. It's an encroachment in the setback as it is too. She did call me and told me that it would be out of there by the end of October. They were doing renovations on the house, so that's going to be out by October, end of October. So. On the cease and desist list is 271 White Star Properties. This is K Church. So the public hearing opened on that last meeting, and I know the commission still has that public hearing open. So there was also correspondence in regards to that that came into me late tonight, so I believe all the commissioners have a copy of that, so. And then on the citation, N, 89 Wiskineer Road, next court date on that is November 18th. I'll be in court again on that, and then I'll update the commission after that, so. That's my enforcement report.
Thank you, Mr. Lally. Next up, item 2B, 31 Knoll Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
I'm Rochelle Hadza, the Director of Land Use, and I also happen to be the Wetlands Enforcement Officer and the staff member to the Aquifer Protection Agency per Town Code, Section 5(1)A. This is just a review of some of the things that I witnessed and have been involved in since the beginning of since I was first notified of the violation. This memo was dated to the commissioners yesterday, October 12th. As early as Friday, June 24th, 2022, it was brought to my attention that Mr. Scott McGovern had been depositing significant amounts of earth and material at 31 Knoll Drive without a permit. Despite Mr. McGovern's appearance at my offices the following Monday to discuss the matter with me and his assurances that his activities were not excessive, he continued to dump truckload after truckload of some kind of fill behind his house. In addition, he constructed a second driveway on his property, which is also not permitted. Section 6.1C2J of the zoning regulations. I visited the site on August 23rd to witness and photograph the enormous mountain of material whose origin is unknown and which appears to contain debris. Although it has rained infrequently and lightly, there is already a plume of eroded material and deposits of sediment on the forest floor. Mr. McGovern also filled in a drainage swell, cut down countless trees. Quite sure that's not mine. Mr. McGovern also filled in a drainage swell, cut down countless trees, and caused potential harm to those that remained by covering their roots and lower trunks. The exposed soil appeared unstable, while no erosion and sedimentation controls had been installed. The effect of the monumental change in landscape is hard to characterize as anything but astonishing. It would be difficult to find anyone seeing with their own eyes who would not agree that the neighbor's ability to enjoy their property has been wantonly destroyed. Mr. McGovern's mountain has caused a nuisance and possibly reduced property values. Such activity is prohibited without a permit from the Brookfield Zoning Commission or its duly authorized agent. Regulations regarding filling and grading or earthworks of any kind are found in the Brookfield Zoning Regulations, Section 6. I have copied and pasted on page 2 of this letter certain regulations which govern the activities Mr. McGovern has undertaken and ramped up after he was made aware that the Land Use Office was beginning enforcement actions. In addition to violating the zoning regulations, Mr. McGovern has violated the Aquifer Protection Area regulations of the town of Brookfield, adopted October 24th, 2014, effective December 18th, 2014. As you know, the Zoning Commission is also the Aquifer Protection Agency for Town Code Chapter 5, and in my capacity as the Aquifer Protection Agency's designated staff member, I recommend that the actions of Mr. McGovern be dealt with separately by that agency. The purpose of the Aquifer Protection Agency regulations is in part to regulate, quote, to regulate land use activity within the Aquifer Protection Area, including prohibiting certain new activities. Section 1A3, unquote. As such, the depositing of fill from any unknown source, or indeed from many different sources, may have consequences directly addressed by the Aquifer Protection Agency regulations, but not the zoning regulations. The following regulation from Section 4, prohibited and regulated activities, is relevant. Any, and I quote, any person proposing to carry out a non-regulated activity as set forth in Section 4C of these regulations protection area shall, prior to commencement of such activity, notify the agency or its duly authorized agent on a form provided by the agency. Such form shall provide sufficient information to enable the agency or its duly authorized agent to properly determine that the proposed activity is a regulated activity or a non-regulated activity within the aquifer protection area. It is my view that what Mr. McGovern has done to the land, especially in a residential area where people bought homes because of unique tranquility offered by a mature woods perched on impossibly steep ledges, is the unfortunate reason that enforcement must exist and must be swiftly dispatched.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there anything further you'd like to add?
So, Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Hanson?
as you, and members of the commission, as you know, enforcement is the duty of the commission. I quote Article 9 of your regulations. Enforcement, in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes, the commission is solely responsible for enforcement of the zoning regulations. Of course, you may authorize an agent to do that for you. So the regulations also state that the main purpose of an enforcement action is the elimination of a violation. So Mr. Lawley, as you know, has issued a notice of violation. Mr. McGovern, I understand, although I was not here, presented himself to this commission at the last meeting. It is within the power of this commission to do several things, one of which is to issue a cease and desist order for this illegal activity, but also you can issue an order of corrective action to comply with the regulation. So that could result in removing the bill, but it is within your power to mete out a corrective action as well. So that's what I have to present to you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments about this matter at this time?
I have one. I know that a cease and desist letter was issued, I think, by you, and it may have been pulled back due to the fact that it's normally supposed to go through this commission and be approved by the zoning enforcement order. Is that, so there's currently no cease and desist order in effect, is that true?
That's correct, Mr. Kim. So this was let me just explain a little bit more about the earlier history of this. Mr. Lawley, our zoning enforcement officer, was on vacation. As land use director, I was left in charge of most things land use. I received I had a visitor to the office, some of the neighbors who reported this action to me, and I took action at that time without having been duly authorized by this commission. So after having sent my first notice and having consulted with the attorney on my second thoughts, it was decided that Mr. Lawley would send a similar, if not identical, violation under his own name because he is your duly authorized agent. So Mr. Lawley, I discussed this issue with Mr. Lawley, and he said that normally he would then, the second action by this commission is typically a cease and desist order. But in speaking with the attorney, it is certainly within your power to issue a cease and direct order. I also asked Mr. Lawley if he was familiar with Brookfield's this kind of a violation in Brookfield's history. In other words, one that may require swift action and possibly serious action. And Mr. Lawley could not recall something of this nature that had been had been brought to the commission and had to be kind of undone or restituted.
Just one follow-up question. How would we proceed at this point with a cease and desist order?
Well, it's actually it is within Mr. Lawley's ability, according to the regulations, to do this on his own. But certainly this commission can direct Mr. Lawley, to do that at this time. If the commission feels that that's sufficient, it's certainly again it is your decision.
Well, if I may have one more minute of the commission's time, Considering the information that we've received to date and the fact that the situation is certainly not getting any better, I think it would behoove the commission to consider issuing and definitely issue a cease and desist order at this point so that further actions on the property cease. And at that point, we would next need to consider corrective action. So,
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Kame's comments and maybe get input about what the corrective action should be based on more expertise than I think any of us have on this. And I recommend a second is to make Director Hatza the, what do they call it, deputy CEO, because we're short-staffed, and if Fran's out of town, we would have nobody as CEO in order to stop anything. So, we have the power to
Thank
do
you.
that too.
Maybe that'll be a separate
Yeah,
motion,
it
but
could be later, or
did you want to say something?
I
Mrs.
did.
Holmes?
I went to the Stout residence this week, and I saw the property. And I definitely think that I agree with you about property value possibly being affected by what the neighbor has done to his land. The steep grade is it's steep. It's very steep, and I can see runoff and water going down there. The photos check out, all these photos. I believe you guys have them. So definitely, I think action needs to be taken.
Thank you.
well, if it pleases the commission, I'd like to make a motion that a cease and desist order be issued by the zoning commission through Mr. Lally for 31 Green Knoll Drive, so that further dumping and any further grading work, or any work at all, be suspended until such time as commission can consider it further and consider corrective action.
Mr. Kame has made a motion. Do we have a second to his motion?
I'll second that.
Mr. Pratt seconds it. Is there any further discussion about the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please do signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Would we also want to entertain a motion at this time to deputize the land use director as another zoning enforcement officer while we're at it? Is there any interest in that?
thank you. I can't make motions.
Were you making a motion?
I can't make a motion.
He's
I'm not a
not able
voting
to.
member.
All right, I'd like to make a motion.
Otherwise, I would have.
If it pleases the commission, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Director Hadza as the deputy zoning enforcement officer to, in the event that our primary zoning enforcement officer is unable to respond, that she can fill in when needed.
Second.
Or I guess it wouldn't be when needed, you would be the backup, right? Okay, as a backup zoning enforcement officer, or secondary zoning officer. Probably should just renew that completely and just say deputy zoning enforcement officer, right? Okay.
Okay,
Second.
Mr. Kame has made a motion. Is there a second? Mrs.
Second.
Holm has seconded it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or anyone against it? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mrs. Hatza. Next, under the agenda, item number 3. Sure, if you want.
Well, I just didn't want to leave, was discussing with the chairman here that I just think that we should have a moment to talk about corrective action here. I was, when this first started, thought it was simply a fill problem, and I was unaware of the fact that there was an aquifer issue here with pollution, possible pollution of water. We know that a sediment screen was put up. However, when you do look at the property and based on the information furnished by Commissioner Holmes, the photographs are accurate. You can see runoff, significant runoff on the property. The silt screens stop silt. They do not stop runoff. They do not stop water from leaching through the fill into the groundwater. As as many of you know who read the paper in Brookfield, we've had several significant groundwater problems in Brookfield, and they are not easy to remediate. So I think the commission needs to consider corrective action, but as indicated by the director, we don't have any real cases to point to. So I would like to see if the zoning commission can provide us with some guidance on that as to, you know, what we should do on that. So that was my comment. So if we can continue this until next week, and I would like to.
Would you like to get the guidance from the land use office? or-
I'd like to see some sort of things, you know, where are we with this? I know there's a limit as to the amount of fill that can be put in. However, the quality of the fill that's in there, I don't think is the type of fill that we would approve as a zoning commission had we had a permit before us, because it appears to be primarily construction debris from what I can see. I don't know, and the property owner was asked at the last meeting if any testing had been done on this fill, and the answer was no. We asked them if they had any documentation regarding the amount of fill. They indicated they did not. So there may be some testing that needs to be done here. You know, we may just decide that this is, you know, improper and need to direct that it be removed. But I do think we need a period of time to consider all of those options.
So are you proposing to make a motion that we ask land use to come up with a recommendation relative to that?
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at what our options are with respect to that, yes, and up to and including removing all the fill.
Okay, could you just please restate it for the purpose of
I'd
the
like
vote?
I'd like us to make a motion that we receive additional information from the zoning enforcement and the aquifer protection group in the town regarding our options with respect to 31 Green Knoll Drive and the fill that's in there. Exactly what are our options in terms of removal of the material or remediation of that site.
Don't forget the aquifer.
And the aquifer issue, yes, I'd like to have them address that in further detail. That's actually the one that is most concerning to me, because I believe most of those people in that area have wells, and that's not something we want to play around with at all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kame has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Pratt seconded Mr. Kame's motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. Next up, item number 3, review of correspondence. There's correspondence noted there. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that as well, Director Hodson, perhaps. I certainly don't have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Yes, I will. I didn't know it would be, but- Thank you again. So with regard to the correspondence, I unfortunately, I guess I only just received this letter. I'm sorry. No, you know what? I'm looking at the wrong thing. Do we have the correspondence from Mr.
That was sent to all the commissioners via email, so,
From Mr. Shimon?
yeah.
Well, I would not mind, just trying to, review a little bit my knowledge of the case, and just,
Sure.
extemporary these things. So this involves, is it 107 Dell?
107 Dell Road, correct.
So, I am aware of, Mr. Schmalk and, two other neighbors, I believe, is that correct, Mr.
Correct, yes,
Rizali, have
yes.
complained about significant activity at this property that they believe is not permitted by the zoning, the permit that they received. It is an industrial zone, however, whatever kinds of activities were approved at some point under a special permit seem to have, in my view, and, based on the complaints, and also, having seen the operation, the extent of the operation has grown quite large. Now, I can't speak to whether it is within the special permit guidelines that, were given to the woodcutter, but it seems to me that it's possible that the operation has increased in size, which is not allowed under a special permit. I think further investigation on this particular, I'd certainly like to investigate it further because, we have repeated complaints, it's not, simply a one-off. So that's kind of my thinking on it. I do think that there's a significant increase in activity. There are enormous trees being brought in now to the site, whereas before it was like a wood cutting, wood chopping, or, firewood gathering concern. Certainly, indeed, one needs wood, in order to make firewood from, but, if it is the case that this kind of activity is not allowed, I certainly think we should move on that, but, I don't have any particular, further information for you today. I think Mr. Lawley is, the zoning officer thinks that it is allowed within the regulations. I think further action should be taken, or at least investigated.
Just a quick question, is that something you could give us next meeting,
Certainly.
some additional guidance on?
Yes, Mr. Secretary, I can do that.
If I can say something
Sure.
also too, I mean, I know during the complaints, they've complained about backup alarms and stuff, noise being down there. Obviously, backup alarms are their federal requirement for OSHA. I mean, that's a requirement. And obviously, I think 107 Vale Road's in the process of being developed, as is 127, so there's a lot of wood cutting going down there. I believe they have a valid wetlands permit to be doing it all, so there is permits in place for the work that's being done down there, so.
Okay.
Thank you, yes, and indeed, if it's not the case that it's a violation, no one would like me more.
Mhm.
But I do think it requires further investigation.
Thank you. Next up on our agenda, item number 4, continued public hearings. We have 128 Federal Road, and let me just say, this is a continued public hearing for 128 Federal Road, application Z-22-53, which was opened on September 22nd, 2022, and remains open to continue to accept any data bearing on this application. The public notice and rules still apply from the previous meeting. Those general rules being that after accepting any data, I will ask for questions of clarification, which will be followed by comments from those in favor, and finally comments from those in opposition. Thank you. If you would like to speak, just please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, Michelle Morris-McCauley with Untitled Engineering of Brookfield, Connecticut.
Michelle, can you please spell your last name?
Micooli. Just a quick overview, just to remind you, it's a 4,700 square foot building, with retail and a drive-through restaurant, with the drive-through in the rear of the property, access from Federal Road, and the existing entrance from BJ's. We've been before wetlands, we received the wetlands approval. We have proposed 44 parking spaces with a 15 stacking queue for the drive-through in the rear of the property. We submitted 2 letters to you, last week, or this week. The first letter was from me, myself, just kind of going over access to the site. I can read it, I can go over it with you. It's just kind of reinforcing how the cars get in and out, and I also did a little bit of a comparison to the Dairy Queen, the road, because I know there was some comparisons at the last meeting, so I wanted just to make it clear of what the differences are between the 2 sites. Just a quick overview, so if a car is driving northbound on Federal Road, to enter the site, they have to use the signalized intersection at BJ's and make the left into BJ's, and then make a right into the southern portion of the property, and they either have the option to park or travel through the site, going to the north to the entrance of the drive-through in the northwest section of the property. To exit the property, they would, to continue, if they wanna go out of the property and go northbound, they would exit in the southern end of the property, make the left at that access way, use the signalized entrance to continue northbound, onto Federal Road. If a vehicle is traveling southbound on Federal Road, we have a one-way entrance that they can enter at. They can either go straight to the drive-through or stay to the left and park and walk in. As I said before, we have the ability for 15 cars to queue. I looked at how many additional cars that we needed before they stack and hit Federal Road, and it cars, so it would be a total of 23 cars that would stack and queue for the drive-through. Realistically, I don't see that 23 cars would sit there, because if you kind of do the math, if you're sitting at the drive-through, it's a minute to 2 minutes at a drive-through. If you're the 23rd car, you're sitting there for 45 minutes. It's kind of a long wait to sit for a drive-through. When the car wants to exit and go southbound, they can either exit the south part of the site, or they can use a southbound entrance only that's in the northbound entrance of the site. And then I looked at the Dairy Queen, which is just to the north of us, two properties to the north of us. They have an entrance only for southbound traffic. So if you're driving northbound, you have no entrance. You have to either make an illegal left turn into the site, or you have to go up, turn around, and come back down to enter their site. In their drive-through, they only have the ability for 12 cars to queue for their drive-through, and they can do 2 more cars for a total of 14 cars before they're stacking onto Federal Road. And if you missed a drive-through when you come in to the left, then you have to go out, you have to go around the building, come back, go southbound, turn around, and come back northbound. So a little bit of difference of how the traffic will function. So that goes over in my letter, and then the traffic engineer for Hardesty in Hanover put together a letter. I believe they have some additional, they did some traffic counts this past weekend, so they wanted to go over that with you, so I'd like the Flante to go over that with you.
Thank you, good evening. Mike Galante, Hardesty in Hanover. And as Michelle mentioned at the last meeting, there are really, I guess, 2 items that we had to provide additional information on. One was really the site access, the drive-through storage, if you will, we call it queuing. And then it was a comparison to the Dairy Queen that recently opened, I guess over the summer, opened up nearby, and then traffic volumes. And we have a letter you already have dated October 6th, which touched on the site plan, which was described already. But the site is served by 2 driveways. The one directly from Federal Road is a right in, right out driveway. Then we have the benefit of using the BJ's access drive in that existing traffic signal. And at that traffic signal, we actually are recommending modification to the traffic signal plan to provide a protected left turn movement into BJ's northbound, and a protected left turn southbound to drive across the road itself. So, comparison to the Dairy Queen driveway, and I hate to compare it to someone else's site plan, but they're really very different. We have the benefit of circulation around the buildings as they do, but we have storage separate for about 15 vehicles, plus about 8 vehicles to be lined up for a drive-through window. Most of the traffic, we estimate 80% of our site traffic will use the BJ's driveway, the traffic signal driveway, that's southbound turning left in some cases northbound left turn in and southbound right turn in. The remaining 20%, of course, would use the driveway right turn in, right turn out into the driveway itself. So they have 2 options to access our driveway and 2 options to exit the driveway. From a safety perspective, we had many site plans before we got to a plan that was actually submitted as part of an application. And this certainly was the best plan for the size of the building, the location of the building, the layout of the parking lot, the access to the drive-through in the back, and then of course eventually we did a traffic study based on that 4,700 square foot building with 2 different types of lane uses. Basically a coffee shop type of building, and then a pure retail of building itself. We estimated traffic based on standards, and then we did our analyses, and then of course we have recommendations for the BJ's traffic signal intersection. The Chick-fil-A is already being improved by, I'm not sure if it's the state or Chick-fil-A, but someone's improving it. And then we have recommendations for a minor modification at the Candlewood Lake Road intersection as far as a minor change in traffic signal timing. That we deal with the state, Connecticut DOT to do that because it's a state road. So that's essentially in the first letter report. And then there's also a piece in there for traffic. And then there's another letter I'd like to submit tonight. As mentioned, we did traffic counts last week and this past weekend. And I apologize for getting it in late because we couldn't make it in time for the cutoff. I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday. But we did traffic counts, and I'll describe those in a minute. But going back to the original traffic report, which was dated 2021, and our traffic counts were conducted in 2020, and we acknowledged right up front that it was during COVID. But Condot has standards to do traffic counts during COVID, very, very distinct standards which we follow. And if I can briefly describe it so you kind of understand how we did this. We compared traffic counts from Condot and other studies from, I think it was 2018 and 2019. We did actual counts in 2020 at 3 signalized intersections in our study area along Federal Road. We took that data, compared it to the previous data of a year or two old from that point on, and submitted that to Condot Planning for review and approval. And they approved those numbers. So the numbers that are in our report were approved by Condot. And just to give you an idea of the adjustments, it wasn't a minor adjustment. And everyone at that point was being very conservative as far as, well, what is the traffic during COVID? How does it compare before? And what do we anticipate it to be after COVID? Let's assume for the moment we're after COVID, and I have that comparison from the counts from last week. But just to give you an idea, and we submitted this information and Condot approved it. It wasn't Condot basically saying use this 5% increase. We said, here's what we think it is, and they reviewed it and approved it. Just quickly, at the BJ's driveway, for a comparison, we increased traffic in the morning peak hour by 34%. Our 2020 counts were increased by 34%. The afternoon was increased by 19%. And the Saturday was increased by about 26%. So our numbers, were certainly higher than what the actual counts were, because everyone was concerned that, well, everyone's working at home and not going to work, so how can you do traffic counts? So there's a very, very specific program to do that adjustment, which is what we did. And we submitted it to the state before we actually did the report and submitted it to the town. The next part of this is in the letter that I will submit tonight. We did traffic counts last weekend, Saturday, which was actually Columbus Day weekend. And the comparison of that data compared to what we call a 2022 no-bill condition, which is the numbers I just referred to as far as the 2020 volumes, compared to previous data from the state and others. And then we adjusted that up to a 2022 design year, assuming our building would be open and operating at that point in time. So now, basically, there are reasons why it was delayed to some point. But we did the traffic counts at the BJ's driveway at Federal Road again, same time periods, weekend morning, weekday afternoon, and Saturday, identified the peak hour volumes, and we compared that to what we actually use in the traffic analysis. And I'll just give you some quick numbers just to give you an idea of what's really going on. Total intersection volume at that BJ's intersection in 2022 estimates by our office in the report that we use for the analysis. I'll use round numbers, just under 1,900 vehicles passed through that intersection in a 1 hour period. Our actual counts from about a week ago, we actually counted just under 1,300 vehicles. So there's a difference of about 600 vehicles lower than what we use in the traffic report. We're happy about that, not that we use too much traffic, but that we're conservative. And there was a comment, well, did you include Dairy Queen? Did you include the daycare? Well, they weren't identified when we did our traffic study. If you look at their reports, we're not in their reports. So we've accounted for that by this adjustment. Plus, we also applied a growth factor of 1.1% per year for those 2 years to account for other development. So that's 1.1% by 2 years against, let's say, 3,000 vehicles. So it adds up as far as accounting for Dairy Queen and so on. The afternoon is very similar. Now, just quickly, we actually use a round number of 3,300 vehicles at the same intersection of BJ's in the PM peak hour. We counted 2,600 vehicles last week during a 1 hour period. Again, 700 vehicles less than what we used in the analysis. Saturday is higher numbers, of course. We used in our report 4,100 vehicles. We counted about 2,900 vehicles. So less by about 1,300 vehicles. So our report is very conservative. It shows that the adjustments that we submitted to the DOT and they agreed to, because everyone wanted to be conservative at the time, were appropriate and on the high side. But our mitigation plan is based on the higher numbers. We're not coming in with a new report saying we don't need to do anything. We have the same mitigation plan, which is traffic signal modifications. So that's the second letter, if I can submit it tonight for the record. It should be up there. But just overall summary, site plan, we think our site plan is appropriate and safe. When you pull in that driveway from Federal Road, there's quite a bit of area before you have a backup of cars coming back to Federal Road. Not to pick on the other plan up the road, but you come in that driveway, belly tap, right turn only into that driveway, and you need to make an immediate decision, parking lot or drive-through. And that's one of the reasons why that driveway is probably backing up on the corner. So I don't wanna compare, but it's only to provide that comparison. So we're very comfortable with our driveway as far as safety, circulation, and maneuvering through the site itself. And 15 vehicles plus 8 vehicles is plenty of stacking for a coffee shop drive-through window. And I can certainly answer any questions you may need. Now or later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the audience have any questions of clarification before we hear comments, pro or con? Hearing none. The chair is now prepared to recognize those who wish to speak in favor of this application. Anyone? The chair is now prepared to recognize those who wish to speak in opposition to this application. Hearing none, are there any questions from the commissioners?
I just have one, and I think you probably answered it at some point. Turning left out of there, I know you're gonna say that it's only a right turn. I'm not completely, I don't really understand the traffic laws. Is it double yellow there? Is it even possible to turn left and go north on that? I know when folks come out of the gas station at Costco, it's right turn only, and I believe if you make the U-turn there, that's illegal to cross the double yellow line and head the other way. So I'm assuming that's the same situation.
Yeah, Michael Lonte, Odyssey,
Sure.
over again. Yes, you will not be able to make a left turn out of the driveway. One, the configuration of the driveway will be built to prohibit that as best as, if someone wants to make it, there's a double yellow center line, you can't cross it with the driveway.
Okay.
And there'll be signing there, no left turn and so on.
I know people still do it I'm assuming they get tickets at some point, but.
Yeah, we have the benefit of our internal circulation gets us to the BJ's driveway with traffic safer. And I think we've all agreed it's a safer and better place to make a left turn out of the site.
Right, and I agree with you. I don't see any real safe way to do anything but out of any of those properties
Yeah.
other than to make a right turn. I mean, Chick-fil-A accepted because it's, as you say, it has a signal there.
Yes, it's traffic safer, yes.
Okay, that answered my question, thank you.
I did sit with the traffic report by Hardesty in Hanover this week, and just kind of took screenshots of some things that jumped out at me. It's a level F service on Saturdays,
Yes.
it says in your report. Do you assume that will change, or just be level
Well,
F
we're
and worse than that,
obligated in a
once the
way.
Starbucks comes?
I didn't think of it, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
We're maintaining that, but we're improving to mitigate our additional traffic on at those intersections.
By doing all those things that you said, like the Candlewood Lake Road
Correct.
signal,
Correct.
change and so forth.
Yes.
But that does jump out at me. It says it right here.
Sure.
It's important to note that on these 3 intersections, left service during Saturday, midday hour, is gonna be happening. So it's already very trafficy over there. And then I did,
Keep in mind, if I may, that's based on the very high volumes we use in the analysis. Will it be a little bit better? Probably, but we're not taking back what we said as far as level of service or mitigation.
okay, and then my concern at the last meeting was that the data was old and the traffic study was old. And you did mention it took place during 2020. The date on the front of the report is March 2021. And then in this part, for purposes of completing this traffic analysis, it is assumed this development will be approved, built, and fully occupied by the end of 2022. That would be right now.
Correct.
So it does seem like this is a little bit, the report was sort of old, so thank you for going out to do some more counts.
Yeah.
But I still have my concerns about this project and the level of traffic and the safety and the fact that I don't know what the other 2 units are in the build and what they are
Well,
slated to be.
Well, we use retail for the analysis, and I know there was a concern. If there was to be another restaurant or another something, we'd have to come back and analyze it.
Right.
Okay?
I'm just stating my concerns for the commission
No,
and,
that's
and the
fine.
audience, and
We
just,
appreciate it.
just my 2 cents about checking out the study.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commissioners? At this point, then, I would like to accept a motion to either close the public hearing or continue the public hearing. pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, if I may speak, all my questions have been answered, and I think the engineering group has answered our questions that we had at the last time. Just as in a comment, Federal Road is, there's a lot of traffic on Federal Road because there's a lot of options on it. I think that's probably the last property of significance to be developed on that property, so in terms of traffic, that horse left the barn a long time ago, so I would make a motion that we close the public hearing at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Kame has made a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Mr. Komar has seconded that motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? That motion does carry then. Hearing is closed. Thank you. We'll discuss it at the end. Next up on our agenda, item number 4B, 271 Federal Road. And again, this is a continued public hearing for 271 Federal Road, application Z-2250, which was opened on September 22nd, 2022, and remains open to continue to accept any data bearing on this application. The public notice and rules still apply from the previous meeting. Those general rules being that after accepting any data, I will ask for questions of clarification, followed by comments from those in favor, and finally comments from those in opposition. Is there anyone here who wants to speak on the application? If not, I believe that we did receive some correspondence. I would ask the secretary to please read that into the record at this time.
We received correspondence from Zelda's Needle and Cooper PC, law firm of one in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's addressed to the Brooklyn Zoning Commission regarding public comment in opposition to zone change application number 22-50 to be read into the record at the October 13th, 2022 meeting. Dear members of the Zoning Commission, I write on behalf of the Rollingwood Condominium Association numbers 1, 2, and 3, and the Rollingwood Master Condominium Association, collectively Rollingwood, private residential communities with over 245 units and many more owners and residents, to express their opposition to the application this commission has referred to as application number Z-22-50. Application Z-22-50 proposes a zone change from C1 to C2 to 271 Federal Road, and affects other properties 269, 273, and 291 Federal Road. I request that this public comment be read into the record at the October 13th, 2022 Zoning Commission meeting. In its application, the applicant claims that the Zoning Commission made an inadvertent mistake in December 2018 by zoning 271 Federal Road and surrounding properties as C1. To rectify this alleged mistake in the zoning map, the applicant was obligated, pursuant to zoning reg, consider and evaluate, see whether the proposed zone map amendment will, 1, protect the public health, safety, and welfare and property values, and maintain the purposes of the regulations. See sections 1.2 and 8.6D. There is no provision for the Commission to approve a zone change application due to a mistake, nor has the evidence been provided in the application demonstrating the mistake was made in the first instance. Significantly, a Commission approval of application number Z-22-50 will substantially affect the property rights of Rollingwood, an affected property owner, to use and enjoy its affected property. Rollingwood has been granted an easement over Terra Drive, a private road on which Rollingwood relies to access its property units and Federal Road, to use Terra Drive in common for purposes of ingress and egress. Without or with impaired access to this road, Rollingwood residents would be unable to access their homes. As a term of its easement, Rollingwood assumes full responsibility for and the costs and expenses of the maintenance, repair, and replacement of portions of Terra Drive, as well as any necessary improvements, widening, or changing of Terra Drive. Should the Commission grant the application before it, the applicant makes clear that 271 Federal Drive, a property which also otherwise would be inaccessible from Federal Road, but for Terra Drive, would be used as a church, which use would substantially increase the amount of traffic on Terra Drive. In turn, Rollingwood owners would further be required to spend substantially more funds to maintain Terra Drive to be able to use their property. Further, the additional traffic on the private drive would negatively impact the ability of Rollingwood residents to enjoy their property, would reduce property values and desirability. By contrast, the proposed change in the zoning classification would not serve the purpose of the regulations, as the change would not protect the public health, safety, welfare, and property values of over 245 Rollingwood residents. Further, as mandated by Section 8.6B, parentheses 3 of the zoning regulations, in accordance with Connecticut general statutes, an application for a zone change shall be accompanied by documentation confirming that all adjacent property owners affected by the changes have been notified by a certificate of mailing of the proposed changes. This documentation shall include, at a minimum, the following information: copies of documentation from the United States Postal Service confirming the dates the letters were mailed to each property owner. Section 8.6B3 further mandates the following: applications that do not contain the documentation specified in items 2A to D above in the initial submission will be considered incomplete. This requirement cannot be waived by the Commission. Emphasis added: if a proposed zoning change will affect the property owner's right to use and enjoyment of his property, notice of that proposed change is integral to the owner's right to due process. See Timberland Development Corp. versus East Haven Planning and Zoning Commission, 1997, Connecticut Superior, Lexus 1464, Superior Court, May 7th, 1997. The zoning regulations require the importance of notice by requiring proof of notice be provided to the Commission as part of an application. Application number Z22-50, also available on the Brookfield Town website, fails to include documentation confirming the dates that any of these letters were mailed to the property owners affected by the proposed zoning change. The failure to do so deprives the interested property owners of their right to due process and renders this application incomplete. Brookfield zoning regulations 8.6B 3 parentheses E. Due to its incompleteness and the heightened importance of notice of this change, the Commission properly should deny application number Z-22-50 for lack of information. See Brookfield zoning regulations sections 8.6C2 and 8.11C. Given the foregoing reasons, Rollingwood strongly opposes and encourages this Commission to deny application number Z-22-50. Very truly yours, Robert A. Pacelli, Jr., Attorney at Law.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Does the applicant wish to rebut that?
Yes, for the record, Eric Cook, KUKK, attorney at Cook Law Office, KUKK Law Office, 30 Marlinbrook Road, Brookfield, Connecticut. The first part of the letter was incorrect. I did not say that the Brookfield Zoning Commission back time said we erroneously changed the zoning from C2 to C1. I said we erroneously took away that right from those properties to have a church. So the first part of that letter is incorrect. The second and most of the middle part of the letter is all, again, incorrect, because this right to this property was long before the condominium associations was ever there. So when the condominium associations was built, and this particular property actually gave them the easement and right-of-way, they had the right to put in a church. They had a right to do everything we're saying they should have back. So all that argument fails completely, because it was always there. We're just saying it wasn't there for the last two and a half years. But otherwise, it was always there. As far as notice, this is the first time that we're getting any type of feedback from the town that notice wasn't properly given. We followed everything from zoning, we mailed out everything, and everything, to the best of my knowledge, was turned in. So I'm not too sure how to respond to that, because we have no knowledge that it wasn't. and nothing in their letter proves or says how it wasn't done. We did it the exact way that Brookfield zoning was supposed to do it.
I just had a quick question to follow up on you. Was notice given to the 245 residents, a mailing?
There was notice given to over like 300. Yeah, there's a series of a lot of notices that, and I believe, Fran, they were turned into the town.
I believe Paul Scalzo brought him in.
Brought them in, yeah.
So because, I mean, I'm familiar only, and I asked this question because I'm familiar with zoning appeals that have been filed on my street. I've received notices from my neighbors that they wanted to do something, and I received certified letters. So were those mailed out to the residents?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
So we had, from Brookfield zoning, we ended up getting a spreadsheet of all the residents surrounding them, and every one of those residents was mailed. And then,
Okay.
again, Paul Scalzo dropped off every one of those mailings, because it was extensive.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So that list you have in your application, all those abutters, they had gotten those letters.
Correct.
'Cause there's
So
a
we
huge
did
list.
turn in a list.
I have another edification, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
This is referring to, Attorney Cook talking about the way the zones change. Just for edification for the commission and the audience, prior to the zoning map change, there used to be one zone from, where the town center district is now, all the way to the bottom of Brookfield. And during the process, we split it into two separate commercial zones, recognizing the bottom was more intensive, big box versus the top, which was a neighborhood. And that's where he's referring to. When we created those two zones, they had slightly different uses allowed. And that's where the church use got dropped from the overall zone that it used to be when it was split into two zones. And I keep the records, so I happen to have a map of the old zone that was in force then. Just we should have it at the town hall too, but if you'd like to look at it, it's that light blue area. You can see how far it goes from the southern border of Brookfield up to Four Corners. And now that's split into two zones. So that's how that got lost, there's slight differences, that's being one of them.
I believe at the last meeting too, I turned in for the record, the old zoning map, in color.
Thank you, Mr. Timmon. Thank you, Mr. Cook. And also, it was just handed to me that the evidence that the list of names, people that were notified, was received at Town Hall, but we also had it as part of our packet.
Thank you.
Just remember, we didn't write the letter.
Well, I know, I just wanted to explain to the commission that everything in that letter, to the best of my knowledge, is inaccurate.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up on that, because I think we did ask you that at the last meeting, was notice given to the residents.
Yes,
And when you
did.
made your original presentation,
Yes.
you indicated there was, and we obviously have that information here.
And I just wanted on the record to respond to that letter, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. At this time, does the audience have any questions of clarification before we hear comments pro or con? I hear none. The chair is now prepared to recognize those who wish to speak in favor of this application. Noted that no one has stepped up. Likewise, the chair is now prepared to recognize those who speak in opposition to this application. Chair recognizes someone. Please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Robert Pacelli from Zeldis, Needle and Cooper, 1000 Lafayette Boulevard.
Can you spell your last name?
Yes, it's P as in Peter, A-C-E-L-L-I, Junior, from Zeldis, Needle and Cooper, Z-E-L-D-E-S, Needle, N-E-E-D-L-E, and Cooper, C-O-O-P-E-R, 1000 Lafayette Boulevard, 7th floor, Bridgeport, Connecticut. I'm appearing here today on behalf of the Rollingwood Condominium Associations 1, 2, and 3, and in some ways I apologize for having required or submitted something that you then read, because I was unsure at the time of submission whether or not there'd be an opportunity to speak here today. So certainly in order to protect my clients, I felt it was necessary to submit a letter. not to be duplicative, because I don't want to take up too much time here. I just would like to point out that it was at least unavailable to me information in the package online that would show that notice was given, so that statement was made based upon the information that I was able to locate in the application as set forth online. Whether it seems as if it was there, it just wasn't available to me. So if that certainly has been done, then we would withdraw that objection. But I leave it to the board to determine whether or not notice was proper. Certainly if it was not, the board has no jurisdiction to waive that defect, if in fact there is a defect. And then the other two things I just wanted to discuss very briefly is that there's a list of items that the board is to consider when determining whether or not to grant such a change. And public health, safety, welfare, and property values, and whether or not the change would attain the purposes of the regulation. So whether or not the property at one point in the past had a use that it no longer has, and it may have been a mistake, it may not have been a mistake, it may have been an error, I'm not sure exactly what the claim is at this point after hearing that brief discussion or brief comment. At the end of the day, the evaluation needs to be based upon these factors that are set forth in the letter, which come directly from the regulations. So I just encourage the board to make sure that when considering this, that the proper standard is used during that consideration. And lastly, I will point out that the shared roadway issue is a real issue. There's been a number of years where this association has been maintaining at the cost of over 250 or approximately 250 residents of Rollingwood, which use is a benefit to the applicant. And at this point, the association has, we'll say, settled into a period of time in which the applicant's use has changed. And now, before this board, in consideration of the association, there's a potential to go back to something that wasn't there. There was a potential to have it. There was not a church. Since that's been taken away, the association has acted accordingly. And now, again, we're being asked, or the board is being asked to allow that use again, even though it is a potential use by special permit. If, in fact, that would be granted, it would have a very negative effect on an association that currently is not bearing the burden of a cost related to a church being in that back area, and one use which is not permitted at this time. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and again rest upon my letter, which sets forth all of these arguments in more detail, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I just have 1 minute to rebut, please, Mr. Chair.
Certainly.
So as fellow counsel accurately stated, that one, the church use isn't even here before today. It's going to be by a special permit, and that'd have to come again against its own public hearing. But two, the roadway's always been there, the easement's always been there, and they had the ability to do this. And yes, the use has changed over the last 2 or 3 years, but that's just because the business has folded because of COVID. I don't think anyone was expecting that this road would no longer be used again for any type of vehicular traffic that would be due to what it was prior as the wedding hall or anything else. And the applicant, as far as, or not the applicant, I'm sorry, my fellow attorney did not give any proof of how there was any diminution in property value or a health and safety issue. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments further at this point?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I just want to be real clear here. And I'm sorry if I appear to be redundant here. What we're being asked to do is change a zone for this particular application from C1 to C2. Looking at the current zoning regulations, we allow churches in all zones with the exception of C1, and they're all allowed in all other zones by a special permit. Is that, you agree with that, or?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, all right. So at one point in time, churches were allowed in all zones in Brookfield, is that what I'm hearing, with a special permit? And somehow, when this went forward, C1 was dropped out of it, or?
I don't know if it was allowed in every single zone back then. That I did not take a look at, because we did have different residential zones. I believe, but I don't know the answer for sure if it was allowed in every zone prior. it was allowed there prior, but I'm not sure if every zone.
Okay, because it is, like I say, it is, and if you look at the current zoning, today's version, and you read across the little bar where it says house of worship, it's allowed in all zones with the exception of C1, with special permit, which seems to me somewhat unusual, because I don't know why you would be concerned about allowing it in all these other zones, but not in the C1. So I'm not advocating one way or the other, I just, obviously there was some change from a previous one to another one, and I just don't understand why that would have been the case. I didn't see that as a negative, but.
Yeah, I was part of, I would like to say, almost all the discussions, as well as Commissioner Timmerman, and I don't remember anyone or any of us bringing it up, or any of the people that were coming in that were talking over that period of a year and a half, bringing anything up where it came to our attention.
And I agree that probably most of the churches in this town do predate zoning, so, but that's neither here nor there. Thank you for your information.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, please, sorry, go ahead.
Does C1 or C2 allow heavier commercial business?
So C1 was intended for more intensive commercial, big box, larger parcels, larger buildings, and that was already kind of in place towards the south end of Federal Road. And then C2 towards the northern end. And we got this guidance from the consultant, Milo and McBroom, so they were the main consultants on helping us redo our things, redo our regs and zoning map. So probably that came from, splitting them up, but also recognition of the type of properties that were on the southern side of Federal Road versus the northern side.
So if it, as it is now, big box could go into that?
Well, as it is now,
I'm just
if it had
wondering-
enough room, sure.
Yeah,
but it
why
doesn't.
the residents wouldn't rather have a church than a heavier commercial
Well,
business?
Well,
Sure.
there's other requirements for it. Mr. Timmer, I think, made the point that it would be really impossible to put a Costco back there because of the setbacks and the number of feet and everything required, but it is in the same zone as that.
They both, that's allowed in both zones, so the differences between C1 and C2, and C1, the larger, more commercial, allows adult-type stores, motor vehicle indoor storage, contractors' yards, and self-storage. That C2 doesn't allow, the smaller ones. On the flip side, the C2, the smaller commercial zone, allows churches, one-family dwellings, and bed and breakfast. So those are the only differences between the two zones. And the separation kind of captures, more residential, smaller stuff, and churches in the more neighborhoody type zone, commercial zone, versus more, contractor yards and stuff towards the more commercial end, where people
Yeah, that was
wouldn't
so,
want their houses.
That's why I was wondering why the residents wouldn't want it to go to C2.
Well, sure, depending on, the traffic issue, that's why, I guess, reading on here, they're on the hook for, taking care of that road. So we'll have to close the public hearing at some point, and we discuss it, we'll have to talk about that issue and what we believe is gonna happen there, regarding the traffic.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public before we make a motion on this? Hearing none, I think at this time I'll accept a motion to either continue or close this public hearing.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the commission, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this public hearing, and we have new information tonight that was submitted. There is a question as to what the intent of the zoning changes were. There's also a consideration in here regarding, public welfare and health and safety, which I think should be looked at a little bit more. So if it pleases the commission, I'd like to continue this public hearing to our next meeting and make that motion.
Pardon me, point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We do need to have these
one's been open a while.
65 days.
65.
65 days, it's only been open 2 weeks.
Once we open the hearing, we have to close it within 35 days.
Oh,
Once we get it, we have to open it within 65 days. So 65 to open, 35 to close.
So if someone would just do the math, please, on the calendar,
When did it open?
22nd.
22nd.
There's 30 days in September, that makes that easy. So 1, 2, 3, 4, it would be our next commission meeting that we have to close it. That's 35 days.
Okay, so we have them through and including the next meeting. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Given that new information, I think you can still continue with your motion.
Well, my motion was to continue until the next hearing. We would still be within our time limits.
Well, I have to say something about what,
One moment, do we have a second to that motion?
Second it.
Mr. Pratt has seconded Mr. Kane's motion now. Is there any discussion?
just that they didn't present any findings in the letter about what the health and safety violation could be. I would be amenable to close the public hearing tonight, but.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, go ahead.
Please.
Yes, I do agree with Phoebe, because there's no submitted document here. And, you know, I think we should close the case as well.
Well, I would only add to that, I can see both sides, but this letter was just presented to us as we walked into the meeting, so I frankly, aside from just hearing it read, haven't had a chance to review it, so my own inclination, although I see both sides, would want a little more time to review the information in a more dispassionate way.
So before you call the vote, if you do choose to continue it, then what information? The traffic count, the estimated traffic that'll be on the road, if it's gonna be any larger or less than what the current use is, which was current use at its normal height before COVID, because that's what they're comparing against. They're comparing against what a church use of a of a building of a certain size is gonna have versus the weekend use or whatever use they had as a venue, a wedding venue and stuff, party venue. Because that's what we're comparing, right?
Well, to try to answer your question, I guess the opportunity just to review everything in the aggregate that we've gotten since we have received new information.
Just so the commission knows, the applicant would have to come back under another special permit with another public hearing to address exactly what you're saying if it is a church. Just take that into consideration. This is only the first public hearing just for this zone change. Doesn't mean a church is gonna go in there, and if one does, it has to be a whole nother mailing, has to be a whole nother public hearing, and that's probably where those questions should be asked.
Well, I just did have one more comment. I mean, getting back to the chart that you do, I guess my question would be, under the previous, there's a lot of references have been made to the previous zoning, and if something was left out or not included. Under the previous zoning, were churches, or houses of worship, allowed in C1 zones with special permits?
There was no C1 zone, it was allowed there with the special permit, yes. C1, C2 zone is a brand new creation, that just happened a couple years ago. But it was allowed there prior, I think is your question, prior with the same exact thing they would have to do is come before with the public hearing.
Okay.
How long has the the present owner owned the property?
30, 40 years. It's still the same owners that own the wedding.
Since 2000.
Since 2000? It's been,
I happen to know, I'm one of the owners.
name and address.
1980, John Royce, 74 Drum Hill Road, Wilton, Connecticut. And since 1986.
So, okay, but now it's owned by White Star Properties, is that correct? It's a different
I own
corporation.
West Star.
I understand that, but this is owned by an LLC, not you individually, is that correct? Yeah, so it really technically is a different owner, is that not correct?
It's the same owner.
In 1986. I never sold it.
I understand that.
Same principle, same owner.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. Is there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would ask that there be a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, that motion does carry. This will be continued. Thank you. At this point, I would just like to say that to try to help set expectations, although I don't have the ability to know where everything is going to end up, but I have a feeling that we're going to have a long evening, so I don't know that we're going to have time to do deliberations. We may opt to continue deliberations, but if folks want to stay, they're more than welcome to, but I don't want people to be upset if it's 9:30, 10 o'clock and we don't get an answer by then. Next item on the agenda is public hearings.
Here's the script. Yes. Here's the regulations which he's gonna read. Here's all the comments, okay? The legal notice.
That's it? There's no other?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good, thank you. I'll read it to a point and then I'll give it to you.
Why didn't I make that note? Okay, thank you.
Send me the first two lines and I hand it off to you, then you give it back to me. Do I agree? Who opens public hearing, call upon the commission secretary to read the legal notice. Then I read this, and then I ask you to proceed with reading the correspondence. So there's not much more to this.
You just want to see what's happening?
Oh, yeah, I'll go.
Okay, I'd like to read the introduction to the public hearing, if all those present could try to take their seats. October 13th, 2022, this is a regular meeting of the Brookfield Zoning Commission. At this point in our agenda, we have scheduled a public hearing concerning the application of Toll Gate of Brookfield LLC, application number Z-22-54, for design review for 78 multifamily dwelling units, driveways, parking, grading, utilities, and landscaping. First, let me ask the members of the commission present here this evening to introduce themselves, starting with my far left and Mr. Timmerman.
Alternate Kurt Timmerman?
Darrell Pratt, regular commissioner.
Andrew Kames, secretary.
Gary Getz, chairman.
Chandra Kumar, vice chairman.
Phoebe Holmes, regular member.
Mike Lucia, alternate.
Gwen Arment, alternate.
Thank you. We will open this public hearing by calling upon the commission secretary to read the legal notice of this hearing.
Notice is hereby given, the zoning commission of Brookfield, Connecticut will hold a public hearing in room 133 of the Brookfield Town Hall at 7 p.m. on October 13th, 2022 on the following: 500A and 518 Federal Road, number Z-22-54, design review for 78 multifamily dwelling units, driveways, parking, etc. At this hearing, interested persons may appear and be heard, and written communications will be received. Copies of the proposal are on file in the office of the Brookfield Zoning Commission, dated in Brookfield is September 30th, 2022, and October 10th, 2022, Brookfield Zoning Commission.
Thank you. This application was formally received by the commission on September 8th, 2022. The public hearing is only one aspect of the approval process and is for the purposes of accepting factual information and data bearing on this application and to allow expression of opinion by interested parties. Subsequent to this hearing, the commission has 65 days in which to render a decision on this proposal. The final decision may be in the form of approved as submitted, approved with stipulations, or denied. After reading into the record the correspondence received by the commission relative to this application, we will ask the applicant to present the application in detail. The presentation will be limited to 45 minutes. The chair will then entertain questions of clarification concerning the applicant's presentation. We will hear from those who wish to speak in favor of the application, followed by those who are opposed. Comments must be limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public will have one opportunity to speak during this segment of the hearing and may also submit their concerns in writing during the public hearing. During this segment, the commissioners may ask additional questions. The bylaws of the commission allow only for the presentation of similar positions in succession and preclude the intermixture of comments pro or con. All questions and comments must be directed through the chair. As you are recognized, please state your name and address so that your comments may be legally recorded. Please be assured that everyone will be given the opportunity to speak. However, the commission is most interested hearing factual information relative to the application, and in view of the time constraints placed upon us, we ask your indulgence in not reiterating comments previously presented. After the public comments are received, the applicant will have the opportunity to comment, and the time will be limited to 10 minutes. Are there any questions? We shall now ask the secretary to proceed with the reading of correspondence.
We have a comment sheet for application Z-22-54 for 500A and 518 Federal Road concerning the design review. Fire Marshal Jason D'Souza on September 13th submitted that the fire chief must be contacted regarding the fire hydrant location. Jason D'Souza is the fire marshal of the fire department, and fire marshal's office concerns with apparatus and emergency vehicle parking, access, turning radius, accessibility for ground ladder placement, and water source hydrant locations. Public Works responds that they have no comments. The Police Department responded on October 13th, 2022. Captain Peter Frangs, I inspected the area of 500A and 518 Federal Road. Federal Road in the area of the proposed building is a 2-lane public highway traveling north and south divided by a double yellow line. The roadway in the area of this project is relatively flat and open. There is a berm located north of the proposed entryway that obstructs the sight line. It's hard to tell from the plans if this was being removed, but this should be lowered to increase the sightline radius. Other than the previously mentioned issue, I have no sightline concerns where the proposed entrance exit is located. Any plantings near the roadway should be kept back far enough and maintained to avoid obstructing the sightline. Therefore, the Brookfield Police Department has no objections or concerns regarding the proposed building at 500A, 518 Federal Road. The Police Department defers to the guidance of the state DOT regarding developments intersecting their roadways. The Water Pollution Control Authority on September 1st, Christy McPadden responded that the project will need to come before the WPCA for a permit to connect. Per sewer regulations, section 1.2 treatment capacity and management and recent sewer moratorium, no such property shall be permitted a new connection permit based on the design flows in excess of 2,000 gallons per day or a discharge calculated at the rate of 400 gallons per day per acre, whichever is greater. For improved properties presently or previously connected to the municipal sewer, no such property shall be permitted a new construction permit based on design flows in excess of 2,000 gallons per day or 150% of existing or pre-existing design flows, whichever is greater. Further, notwithstanding the foregoing, applications for sewer connection and discharge permits shall be considered only when the authority determines that the public sewer system and existing sewage treatment capacity is capable of conveying and adequately treating the sewage to be discharged. Wetlands responded that currently under a third-party review, and Wetlands has a special meeting on October 17th, 2022. That ends the correspondence that we received.
Thank you. The chair is now prepared to hear the applicant's presentation.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Steve Sullivan. I'm a professional engineer registered in the state of Connecticut with CCLC. This map right here is an existing conditions map. The property is known as 508 Fellow Road, 518 Fellow Road. The two properties would be combined with this proposed development. Combined, it's about 19.6 acres in the C2 zone. There are 8 existing homes located on the east side of the property, near closer to Federal Road. As part of this development, those dwelling units will be demolished. The rear portion of the property is a wooded piece of property. Topography-wise, majority of property slopes towards Fellow Road. There is a narrow wetland that bisects the property from the southwest corner to the eastern side of the property. To the north is Oak Meadows, another multifamily development that was done years ago. To the west is town-owned open space. Right up in the northeast corner is a commercial building. And then to the south, there's a couple commercial buildings, the cemetery, and then to the far south, some residential single-family homes. The development is 78 multifamily dwelling units. We proposed a divided driveway on the northern side of the property for primary access into the site. This road will end in a cul-de-sac with 124-foot diameter for turnarounds. It's about 1,460 linear feet from there, beginning to the end of the cul-de-sac. 2 smaller, shorter roads that service some units that off of the main access drive. So there's 2 types of dwelling units. There's the carriage homes and then there's townhomes. The carriage homes are located more towards the front. They're larger homes. They have an option for a first floor master bedroom, and they have 2-car garages. You can also fit 2 cars in the driveway space for visitors. The townhomes are 1-car garages, 3 stories, and they have 1 parking space in their driveway area as well. We do have emergency access, which would be on the south side of the property. You access on the south side, and you have 2 alternate ways to get in to the 2 side roads. And that is a grass paver surface. Also, at the beginning of the proposed street, or condominium road, these would be condominiums for sale units, by the way. We have a central mailbox location, and we also have a bus shelter for people that wait for the bus at the end of that proposed street. Each unit would have individual garbage pickup. There's no common or central refuse areas. It's all individual pickup. So there's approximately 8 acres of property that would not be disturbed. That's the western portion. So that's that dark green areas are areas that would not be disturbed and not cleared. That's about 40% of the property. We do have a crossing, as you mentioned before, in front of the Wetlands Commission. So we have a road crossing that wetlands with a 3-sided bridge, or 3-sided box culvert. And from the stormwater management perspective, this is a site that has very good soils, a lot of sandy soils here, with good infiltration rates. So we have 2 main basins to manage the stormwater. That's located on the eastern side of the front portion. These are vegetated areas, but they have the storage capacity, and the soils have the infiltration rates to handle that stormwater runoff. And we have another one located towards the back of the property. In addition, we have some areas where we're taking some of the roof runoff from buildings, 3 areas as a matter of fact, where we'll take the roof runoff and recharge the galleries. So those are buried structures and it just recharges the water. Utilities, it would be extensions from Federal Road through the main access proposed road. We would extend the sewer, water from Aquarium, and gas, from Eversource Gas, and obviously power and communications from those utilities as well. As you mentioned, as in the memo that was just read, we would not be able to apply to the WPCA until the moratorium is lifted. So that would be, we were just going through the local land use process and then have to wait. From an erosion control standpoint, so we have several features for erosion controls. The main feature is what they call a temporary sediment trap. It's basically a excavated area where everything is graded to that area during construction, so that any runoff can settle in that basin, and there's no dirty water running off the site. We have one located on the northern side of the wetland corridor, and also on the south side of the wetland corridor. Also, we have double rows of silt fence, silt sacks for newly constructed catch basins, topsoil stockpile areas. I think what I would like to do now is turn over to our landscape architects. And they to talk about the landscaping design and some of the lighting layout. This one.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening. For the record, my name is Nick Yushjak. I'm the registered landscape architect with CCA LLC in Brookfield. And as Steve mentioned, we prepared the landscape plan for this project. And this gives you the overall view of the site. We've created the landscape plan in 2 portions, north and south, just for clarity. Basically, the landscape plan meets the regulations for the C2 zone, and that would specify that we need to provide a 25-foot wide landscape buffer along the front of the property. So that runs the length of Federal Road. And for every 50 feet of the buffer, we're providing 1 shade tree, 2 understory flowering trees, and 6 shrubs. So we have a variety of them. Most of them are native plant materials. There's also a requirement for a side yard adjacent to a residential area. Down at the south end of the site, there is a 25-foot landscape buffer as well, running from the southeast corner to the zone line. We have one section there where there's a 50-foot long triangle, and we're specifying 1 shade tree and about 30 low-growth junipers on the embankment. This is a spreading ground cover shrub. It's suitable for all lighting conditions, and it's very effective for embankments. That's why we selected that. The remainder of the buffer is existing vegetation to remain. Internally through the site, in the parking islands, per zoning, we have 1 shade tree per parking island. And then along the driveway, we have 12 street trees, understory flowering trees. They're dispersed for a smaller scale and color throughout the project site, from the entrance down to the cul-de-sac. And in front of the buildings, we're providing shrubs at the front entrances for color and island The remaining areas throughout the site will be lawn. In the upland review areas, we have provided wetland mitigation plantings. And these satisfy the requirements of the Inland Wetlands Commission. So those are basically along the wetlands in the upland area, in that darker area. We have special seed mixes. These are found primarily on steep slopes within the site, 2-to-1 slopes in the detention basin areas. They'll be in this area and up in the front, and steep slopes along this area, also in the upland review areas. As Stephen mentioned, the dark green will be existing vegetation and trees to remain. So all this will remain untouched. Site lighting, our landscaping plan C6 north and south. In addition to the planting, we have spotted the light pole fixtures throughout the site. More specifically, they appear on our photometrics plan that was prepared by Apex Lighting Solutions. There are cut sheets in the development report that specify the luminaire that we're using. This is a Hadco Urban Town View fixture. It's basically LED fixture. It's a traditional lantern style. I'm not sure if you can see it from here, but it is basically like a carriage lamp. And these will be mounted on straight round steel poles. Everything is fully shielded. It's sharp cutout fixtures, and the luminaires will be set at a height of between 12 and 13 feet, 12.84 feet exactly. And the zoning regulations call for no higher than 20 feet, so we're well below that. And all fixtures are all the way from the property line.
A couple other things I just wanted to mention. We do also have 15, in addition to visitor spaces in everyone's driveway, we have scattered 15 additional visitor spaces throughout the site. And at 2 of those spaces, we did propose electric charging stations for those types of vehicles. We also submitted some architectural maps of what the townhomes and the carriage homes could look like from the facades. Apologize, this is the carriage home rendering, and we actually uploaded it to the site today, actually. This was the townhome rendering, which was uploaded a few weeks ago. But generally speaking, the carriage homes are wider units, and they're generally 2 stories. And the townhomes are generally 3 stories, 1-car garage. And these units would be 3 bedrooms. And as I mentioned, the carriage homes would have an option for a first-floor master bedroom. So with that, I think I'd like to have Joe Valskis talk about the traffic report.
All right, for the record, Joe Valskis, licensed professional engineer, state of Connecticut. We prepared a traffic study.
Joe, can you please spell your last name?
I'm sorry, Valskus. Joe Valskis, I'm with VHB. We also prepared a traffic study for 401 Federal Road as well, down the road. So I'm pretty familiar with this section of Federal Road at Brookfield. Want to point out that in terms of 78 units, and I'll start with the traffic generation real quick before I get into this traffic study. This development normally would, you think that it's a high generator traffic. The State Traffic Administration, the Office of State Traffic Administration, deems this as a lower generator. Even though the parking spaces meet the requirement typically for a major generator, because it's residential, it's excluded. So just want to start with that. That in terms of the state, there's no jurisdiction from the state because it's a lower generator. Okay, so what we did in terms of the traffic study,
you were all familiar with traffic studies. We obviously looked at Federal Road. I've been out here many times myself. Looked at the site drive placement that Steve's laid out here, and there is kind of a S curve here, if you will, in geometry, and looking at that initially, it might be a concern for sight lines, and it's not. You heard from the police chief's comments about the berm. We think it's the berm over here he's talking about, but we'll confirm that. But the sight lines, when you clear all the vegetation away, you have ample sight lines looking from the site drive to the north and to the south. For the speed, this is posted 40 miles an hour. We're seeing the 85th percentile speed, about 45 miles an hour, which is people are traveling at that speed basically. So the sight lines from the site driveway are adequate for the 85th percentile speed. Most people is driving that. So that made this site drive location good in terms of what was laid out by CCA. So we're good with that, and we'll make sure the vegetation is clear from any sight lines and any grading along the site frontage. So we don't see any restrictions here. I think the police chief mentioned that as well. So that's the sight lines. We then looked at traffic counts, and obviously the pandemic, traffic volumes have changed, but they're getting back to normal. Depending on where you're in the state of Connecticut, some locations are actually higher than the peak hours have changed a little bit. We've seen the morning peak hour isn't as it was before. A lot of kids are being driven to school, work from home is happening, but the afternoon peak hour is pretty much there. So we did traffic counts along Fiddle Road, up at Silvermine Road, Pocono Road intersection. That's obviously a signalized intersection. Looked at that as well. And then we looked at also the crash history in the area as well. We looked at the traffic volumes that you normally see. Do site visit, which we've done. And again, I've done work down here at 401 Federal Road. So we know this area pretty well. And the traffic volumes show we're about 10,000 vehicles a day. Back in 2013, the last DOT count was 12,000. So it's, you could say that maybe that's a little lower because of the pandemic. We just don't have any volumes between 2013 and now from DOT except for the counts that we did. We are seeing more work from home happening. So our traffic generation that we developed, ITE, the trip generation manual, I'm sure you've heard that. This kind of development has hundreds of studies of that, and we generated traffic for that. I'm guessing it's even lower now with work from home, what you're saying. But what you're looking at in this size development, it's about 50 cars in the morning peak hour and afternoon peak hour being generated, added to the road. And what does that mean? And in the actual report, we actually have a figure which kind of tells you, kind of shows you what we're projecting based on national numbers for residential units. And you're basically looking at about 20, in a morning peak hour, about 25 turning left out, obviously going up, catch the expressway, about 11 turning right, and you're coming in about 8 and about 3 coming in the morning. In the afternoon's a little different. We have about 14 leaving, turning left, 6 turning right, and then we have about 10 turning left, and then in the afternoon, 24. Not huge numbers when you consider that you have 10,000 vehicles a day here, and you have 500 cars coming south and 600 cars going north. So not large numbers, number one. And number two, in terms of what OSA says, it's not really a high generator. Even still, what does that mean in terms of this site driver location in terms of impact? And we did the analysis. We looked at what's going to happen to this intersection when someone's trying to turn left in, or turn right in. More important, who's trying to turn left out? And you know about level service. You've heard of level service, A to F, F being the worst, A being the best. Really not a problem turning left out of here. Level service C. It's not going to be the easiest left turn during peak hour, but level service C. So we're in between A and F with our turns coming out of there. Up at Silvermine, really didn't see a change. We added volume to Silvermine intersection. We looked at intersection in terms of the analysis, and most of them are going through, some are going left. Really not an impact. The level service table shows that there's really no change in the level of service. That as an engineer, I say, well, there's a problem there. There's an issue there. There's a reduction in level of service. There's an increase in queuing. Didn't see that with the counts that we did of the Silvermine, because it's very low. You're talking 50 cars. That's really not a lot of traffic that's being generated by this development. So that taken in consideration, the site distances are clear here. Good location in between the curves of the road itself. The grade is pretty flat through here, and didn't see crash history in this area as well. The Silvermine, there's some crashes there, but nothing that we see is going to be impacted by these 50 cars. So that's why we're saying in the report, there's really no significant impact from this. We're adding traffic, yes, we are adding traffic to the network, but we're not seeing it as a level of like a retail establishment, things like that. It's very low, it's under 50 cars. You could say a car a minute, you could say that possibly. We think it's less than that now with work from home, that's what we're seeing. So based on that, we conclude that this is not gonna have a significant impact to the traffic. We didn't see a need for a turn lane, nothing like that with low volumes. And yeah, it'll be, level service C to get out, but that's something that is what happens all up and down Federal Road with a building like this, so. That's my petition. Any questions for that answer?
Yeah, I think that's our main presentation, so. we can
Oh, okay.
clarify
Well, we want to give you plenty of time. You still have 25 minutes, so.
How close are, how close?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good?
How close are you, is this?
No
to-
questions
I'm
yet.
sorry.
They're still presenting.
Okay.
No, I just, I think the memo said, I think the town engineer had no comments, correct? That was.
Who?
The town engineer?
Yeah, we have no comment.
No, okay. No, I think that's it. It's, we can clarify things, answer questions.
Yeah, I don't see anything in here. Public Works.
Public Works.
No comments.
So if you're complete, then we'll move on.
Sure.
To follow our format. So does the audience have any questions of clarification before we hear comments pro or con?
Yes.
Please get up to the podium, state your name and address.
Yeah, Richard Kalb, 14 Oak Meadows Drive, it's K-A-L-B, and I'm the president of the Oak Meadows Homeowners Association. Just one question. Did the engineer take into account the volume of vehicles going into and out of Oak Meadows when you did your study as well? Because we're very close proximity to the entrance.
Is anyone, the applicant able to
Is that
respond?
to you or to me?
That would be to
They
you.
asked the question, no,
That would be
the
to you.
questions come to the chair, but I would then defer to you.
Yeah, I can answer the question. So no, we did not. We did not. We focused on this intersection here, Oak Meadows up here. I can tell you that, but the adding 50 cars to that, I don't see that changing the exit. It's 1 car a minute. So 1 additional car a minute to another side drive, don't see it as an impact. If they're right next to us, we could look at that as maybe being an issue, but don't see it as an impact being up here to the north of us. And the traffic that we're adding is very small. If we're talking about a large development, we've looked at that. We've had a lot of through traffic and other site drives, we look at that, but this, we don't have that yet.
But the
Chair?
Oak Meadow traffic is already in the counts.
Correct. Thanks,
That's in
yes.
the counts.
Yes. Yeah, the traffic counts we did here
Yes.
includes everything's out there today. We counted the weekend or weekday after Labor Day, week after Labor Day counted this year in September. So it includes, we also think, some kind of normalization of schools back in session and things like that. So that's what we did the count. Okay, but yeah, I don't see that as an issue being up here, adding a couple cars in the through one. I mean, traffic counts can vary 5-10% per day as well. So this is minuscule in terms of that. Okay.
Thank you. If there's no other questions for clarification, we're going to move to the chair is now prepared to recognize those who would wish to speak in favor of this application. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application?
No, I just have one other question.
Are you speaking in favor of the application?
I'm not, I may have missed my opportunity to speak. It was a
If it's pleases the commissioners and the applicant, would you allow the person to ask another question, even though we passed that?
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
Richard Cal, 14 Oak Meadows Drive. I guess my only concern is in looking at the plot plan, I don't see any recreational facilities, be it for kids or pools or adults. And I'm wondering, is there any plan whatsoever for that?
Not at this point, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, could I ask some questions of
Can you just wait one more? We'll get this thing out
Yeah,
of the
but
way.
usually we ask, commission asks. That way, when they get their questions, when the audience comes, they have
ahead, Craig.
had our benefit of
Go
our
ahead.
questions. Why did you come to us before you had wetlands approval?
Well, we're going concurrently. So we started wetlands back in June.
Yeah, usually
Right,
we wait until we have it, because we can't approve you
No,
without
I
it.
totally understood,
Okay,
and,
all right.
you know, and again, we, hope to have approval by the next couple of weeks, or a decision by then.
Yep.
At least, because we ran out of time from the statutory standpoint.
Right. And, okay, bedroom mix, or all three bedroom?
Yes. Actually, some are two with a loft. So some can be a two-bedroom, there's an option for a two-bedroom, and then you would have a loft.
Right. Lawn irrigation, when you have the lawns, are you irrigating, or is it just natural
That hasn't
rain?
we haven't decided on whether it's gonna be lawn irrigation. That would be that would have to be metered by Aquarium if we decide to do that.
Right. Garage outlets in the garages for chargers. There is a Public Act 2225 coming for, I don't know, probably Jan 1st, where condominium owners have to, have to allow that, but the inside, no. But are you planning on that?
Well, oh, no, we have the two exterior, but you're talking about.
I'm talking about
individual
inside,
Inside.
having a 40, 50 amp outlet inside the garage.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the detail, I mean, again, I'm not an architect, but we
Yeah.
haven't gotten to the detailed architecture of each unit.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they'll take that into consideration if it's becoming a part of the code.
Yep. All right, that's all my questions.
Chair is now prepared to recognize those who wish to speak in opposition to this application. I see none. Are there any other commissioners that had any questions?
Yes.
Please feel free.
Okay, thank you. How close is this to Elbow Hill?
I would say probably,
Actually,
you got it? Say. I would say probably a quarter mile at least, over a quarter mile.
Okay.
Right, so it's a here. Yeah, probably at least that. I actually have video of that, but it's gotta be all that. It's gotta be maybe closer to 2,000 feet. Okay, that's a good distance. It's 600.
It's like 1,500 feet.
Quarter mile.
So if you have 78 apartments with 2 and 3 bedrooms, you'll have at least probably double that many cars, correct?
In terms of parking generation, I don't look at that, I don't know, I look at the traffic generation. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Parking-
Joe Balls.
Well,
For
I don't
parking
mean, pardon
generation,
me,
it's
people
2
going,
spaces per unit is the
yeah,
requirement.
and people going in and out.
Well, so this is a classic, what's the word I'm looking for, dichotomy. You've got traffic generation and you got parking, so you hear 70 units, 2 spaces, 150 cars, they're all leaving at the same time, they're not. The fact is, they're not. So, are there even 2 cars per unit? We don't know. If there are 2 cars per unit, are they all leaving at the same time? No. Now, all the studies we've done, in my 33 years, you never see that, never see it. So, the peak hour, remember, is the peak. So, are the cars leaving before the peak hour? Let's say 8 to 9 is your peak hour. There's people leaving 7 to 8, 6 to 7, and 8 to 9, then 9 to 10, but the peak of that is that 1 hour, and that's what we look at. Do we look at every single hour before and after? We don't, because the volume's much lower. But your 150 cars you're talking about, if they are going to all leave, which we know they're not doing these days, we work from home, they're not gonna go all in 1 hour. In fact, I'll tell you, a parking garage, any parking garage that you go to in Norwalk, let's say, just out the train station is a 700 space garage. Right, we're doing work on that. 40% is up in peak hour. Right, that's a given number. So, same thing kind of applies to residential. You will not all leave at the same time. Okay. All right.
And what's the grade of the slope behind?
Steve?
Which, so, it varies. Up in this area, we have a flat area, and then instead of grading it out, we put a retaining wall there to maintain as much of the wooded area there. We have some 2-to-1 slopes, I guess that would be east of the cul-de-sac area, and also west of the cul-de-sac area. And so those slopes are treated with, there's drainage in them, curtain drains, and there's also a meadow mix. So basically, it's a no-mow area, and it's got tall grasses and stuff. And if you ever look behind, at the intersection of Junction Road and Barnbeck Place, that building, the red barn, in the back is a similar type of slope that we did years ago. It's a meadow mix, so it's a vegetated slope.
Steve, have you calculated the impact on school children? you know, based on the three-bedroom, units, 78?
No, we don't have numbers for that. I think the developer does, with the carriage homes, it tends to be empty nesters actually, especially with the first one master. They tend to like the carriage home layouts, and then the townhomes for various types of people. But no, I don't have that.
If I may, I'd like to ask a question of the gentleman who reviewed the topography. Do you have a listing of the types of shrubs and trees that you were planning on using? You've made reference to like flowering trees and stuff, but are they native? Has it gone that far as identifying those?
Yes, Dick Ushak, for the record. Basically, flowering trees are all natives, and they are in our plant schedule. Bear with me a moment. Okay. For our understory flowering trees, we are specifying American hornbeam, Ace of Hearts redbud, swamp magnolia, and sourwood. These are all natives. To answer your question. So it's a variety of them. They're not all grouped together. We have one of this, one of that, and they're spread out throughout the project for variety.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then I also had a question, clarification about the traffic data, where it delineates the damage, and it says about injury, any type, serious, minor, possible. Is it because that information wasn't available, it's just there was an injury? We don't know the extent of the injuries in the crash data?
Where are you referring to, Jeff? Clarify what you're.
You,
Oh,
look here. it
oh, in
says-
there.
Yeah.
Yes, all right, so what is referring to, Joe Halston for the record, the HBA traffic engineer. What he's referencing is the University of Connecticut crash repository, okay? So University of Connecticut tallies all the crash records. And I'm saying crashes, we don't say accidents anymore, crashes. So all the crashes happening in Connecticut are now tallied by UConn in this database. And that database basically is, that's what you have there, that's a summary of the database itself. And that's based upon information that was in the crash record that they put in the database. So for more detailed information, what we actually do, we actually pull the actual crash record from the police department, and then we look at that. So that's how they classify. I can't answer exactly why it says that, but that's how the UConn Crash Repository classifies and lists it in the records. But if we see there's issues, like a pattern of crashes that is a problem, we talk to DOT first of all, number one. Number two, are we gonna affect that? And then we pull the actual records, the actual police report. We pull that and look and see what's going on in there. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the actual database.
My reason for asking is they could all be minor accidents, but you don't know, it could imply
They could be minor
serious,
crashes,
you
yes,
know?
they could be, yes,
So,
they could be.
thank you.
Good question, thank you.
Is there any other questions?
Well, it says property damage.
Ms. Sadza?
Thank you. As the inland wetlands enforcement officer, I just wanted to weigh in. This application is in fact before the Wetlands Commission. It's being reviewed again on this Monday. And I just wondered if Mr. Sullivan had, I'm assuming that the recommendations by the third-party engineer have been incorporated, and we are looking at those most recent plans that Wetlands will review on Monday.
Correct.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, permission
Ms. Holmes, please.
to go to the ladies' room?
Do we have a motion to take a brief 5-minute recess, perhaps? Would that be adequate?
That'd be
I'd like to
great.
make a motion that we take a 5-minute recess.
Do we have a second to that?
I'll second that.
We have
in
a second.
favor?
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. 5 minutes. Thank you.
We're just grilling you.
Yeah, it's just the grilling minutes ahead.
Put in external.
Yeah, two of them.
What they do in these condos, they don't put those units in automatically.
No.
But when you roll in and you're filling out your option list of all the things you
Oh,
want,
yeah, right.
that gets added in there and you get it.
Yeah, ting.
Well, whatever.
Well, why not, you know? It's
You're gonna have to-
expensive. It's
either you-
$500
Either you
every
pay
now
for
and
it
then.
or they pay for it.
Yeah.
But
point being is, it usually does an option.
They have to worry about sizing the transformers.
Yeah, they'll get it, they get
Yeah,
it
yeah,
right.
they're not dumb.
Because what they'll have is, there's usually like
we
one
had a lot of
pack
takers.
that covers it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. I don't think you have to worry about that.
Yeah,
I've seen that in other.
the Public Act covers outside.
Right.
If you want to do an outside structure, they
Well,
can't stop you.
obviously, that would be an asset.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but Kurt, it says 65 days on this, not 45 or 35. Does the commission have 65 days in which to render decision?
To render a decision after we close the public hearing.
Yeah.
So we have 35 to open, 65 to open, 35 to keep it open.
Okay.
And then 65 to.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
On the, public hearing closed date, just so we're all cognizant. So you have one in open. Yeah, so we know, oh my God, we gotta, like, this one, those days gotta be like.
Let's tell you, property damage, only property damage.
Yeah, but I was asking, see, it says serious, minor, possible, it doesn't tell you what, you know, somebody could have been killed or somebody could have had a broken finger.
Oh,
So it doesn't really help you very much other than to say something happened.
Yeah, we turnover. Yeah,
Used to go, like in Florida, we don't know they're there.
well, that's right.
Yeah, we're still on that. We're still taping the meeting.
Yeah, we're.
The other thing is, we have to ask their permission. I don't think we actually ask. Can you extend it, please? And if they say no, we have to close it.
It's good to be aware of it, though.
Which one are we talking about?
Eric Cook. The zone change. He seemed to tacitly acknowledge that, yeah, you can continue it. I'll give you my blessing to go next. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. We didn't have to get this. That's right. We can open it. Yeah, we're good.
Another week, we gotta make
We
this.
got another meeting. Right.
Sorry.
We gotta
Next
close
meeting.
it by
Next meeting.
Yeah, I just, you know, when we did it before, we would know more when we asked our questions of clarification, and then that might prompt some people in the audience to say, yeah, yeah. That's the only reason I.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Andy.
May I? Go ahead.
You only have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I've been trying to struggle to use my phone. Yeah, click, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah,
It's probably raining like 3 guns out there.
And just like here, it tells you when it was open, it should tell you when it's closed on the agenda. I spoke to Fran, and he said he's gonna ask me to start doing that.
I had to pick Williams.
So at least we'll know when it does happen.
No, we can't. We probably have to keep it open until we know they stop. Once we know that, I suppose we could. Makes no difference. We wouldn't even open it until they have wetlands.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Maybe you can hit your right.
I know.
Yeah, then I gotta go back, go back, go back.
So we can get an approval of this. They just need a building permit before they get their sewer permit. So they can get everything ready.
Inhibited.
We thought we were the last. We aren't.
I know.
Sewer commission.
Yeah.
But that's you.
Yeah, no.
And that's not on the sewer commission. I mean, they have to figure it out. Or pony up money to help them or pay for their, one or the other.
As a friendship, whatever you look at, anything to do with the
Somehow that.
No.
Related to death.
I know your brother.
I said 500A. There already is a 500.
Yeah, 500 had.
And in the front. Yes. Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, United Roofing, that caused the fire.
Ask him for clarification, but I'll see if it's okay with the applicants.
Then they were kicked off the job. They were using hot work, doing hot work with torches, and they were not to, and they caught it on fire.
Thanks for the break.
You're welcome.
Right, yeah.
I always call these Gary.
If everyone could get situated, we're ready to go back into session. I would only ask at this time that Mr. Kame, our secretary, please now make a motion that we go back into session.
I'd like to make a motion that we resume the, tonight's hearing.
Does that motion have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. We're now back in session. Does anyone want to continue with the line of questioning where we left off? It's been brought to my attention that there were some members of the audience who, being unfamiliar with our processes, weren't sure when they could ask a question of clarification, so I was going to ask if it was okay with the applicants if we allow them to do so at this time, which we would give them 5 minutes for. If that's okay. If there's anyone who wants to do that, then please step up to the podium, identify yourself by name and address.
Hi, good evening. My
Proceed.
name is Susan Lupo. I live at 17 Oak Meadows Drive.
Can you spell your last name, please?
Lupo.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question to see if any of these units were going to fall under the category of Section 8 affordable housing or low income.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or make a comment for clarification?
Hi, I'm Sarah Fudi, 48 River Ford Road.
Can you spell your last name?
F-U-T-I-E.
Please step up to the podium.
Sarah, is that with an H or can you spell
F
your
as
first
in
name?
Frank, U-T-I-E.
Yes, and can you spell your first name?
Oh, sorry, Sarah, yes, S-A-R-A.
A-H, thank you. And it was 48 River
River
Ford?
Ford Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're just concerned about schooling, you know, I know you had mentioned that before, just kind of wondering if there's anything, like, you know, the people that are gonna be coming into these condos and apartments, whatever they are, townhomes, if it's gonna be affecting our schools.
We don't have any demographics on types of, people that would be purchasing units. But they're not age restricted, and like I said earlier, the carriage homes do attract the empty nesters. They wanna downsize in those larger homes, but.
But there's no age restrictions.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd ask the applicant if you'd like to sing. Do we have another person, please? Two step up, sorry. Don't be shy.
Hello, my name is Louis Feudy, 48 Riverford Road. We were talking about the growing school systems and the abundance of, on-growing condos and along that lines. And you guys were building a new school system because we're growing as a town. It's getting quite large. And we're building more. Do you think that we're gonna overgrow these school systems and then we're just gonna, our children aren't gonna have the, hands-on, one-on-one that some kids may need? And I was just wondering, maybe they should put a little bit more thought into, okay, who's gonna be coming in here? Is it gonna be a lot of, okay, mom, dad, 4 kids, 3 kids? Because this is an issue, especially with my wife and I being, a young family. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. I'll look around the room and not be hasty and ask again if there's anyone else who would like to speak, make a comment or question. This time I don't see anyone. I would say to the applicant, at this juncture, if you'd like to make a rebuttal or summary of your remarks, this would be the time.
I We have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. Any of the commissioners have anything else to say?
What might be the cost of one unit, a carriage house and a townhouse?
My name is Gary Michael, 52 Deer Hill Avenue, Danbury, Connecticut. I'm pretty much the principal developer of this project. I just wanted to actually answer the gentleman's question about the school system. With regard to this project, I think 39 of these units were trying to appeal to empty nesters. These are only 2.5-story buildings that are going to look like an individual home, and we're hoping to appeal to that market. We feel that there's the demographics would support empty nesters. So half of this project, we hope, will have little or no children unless the grandchildren visiting. And as far as the townhouses are concerned, we have a project in downtown Bethel, which we have 52 condos, and I believe we have about 8 to 10 students that go out of those 52. So if you use those demographics, we'd be having less than 10 students at the school system. And I understand that this is a community that is growing. That's why they have a sewer moratorium, primarily because they feel that there's a tremendous amount of growth. But I assume that the selectmen and the board of WPC will resolve that issue, because it's an economic engine that they need for keeping the tax base low in the community. Now, as far as the fair market value of the project, we know that construction costs have gone up significantly. We are currently bidding a project that we're starting in Bethel, and our construction costs have gone from about 28% up to 43%. So we would like to take advantage of the market as far as what is available. I think that these are going to possibly be in the range of $450 on the townhouses to $650, and on the others, they're probably in a higher 7 to 8.
So these are
Depending
pretty
on-
high-end units.
Pardon?
Okay, these are pretty high-end units.
Yes.
Okay,
And the
Thank
other
you.
part, we're not trying to stay away. We do not want affordable. I mean, we don't think the town really needs, as far as our concern, any more affordable units. And that's all.
Thank you.
Right.
Oh, we have another question, please?
On the landscaping, what is the entrance going to look like? Is it bare? One shade tree per 50 feet is not, it's not very many.
Actually, if you go along Federal Road, it's actually quite a bit, like every 50 feet. You have a shade tree, not only have one shade tree, but you have 2 flowering trees and you have 6 shrubs. And it's not a shade tree every 50 feet. We've kind of mixed it up where you come into the entrance, there's a shade tree at the center island, there's evergreen shrubs as you drive up and you drive out. And off to the corner near the shelter, we do have a storage structure under here, but we do have a flowering tree off to the edge, some evergreen and deciduous shrubs on this side. And as you come around here, there's a couple of flowering trees framing the entrance. Keep in mind that we have to keep the site distances clear for traffic. Everything is back a bit. But then you're driving out, you have a shade tree, you have a row of flowering trees, all different types. Then you have another shade tree, and then you have you have a group of 3 flowering trees, and then a shade tree. So we're mixing it up. It's not
just one tree.
It's not like soldiers going down the road. There's an effort to keep everything as natural as possible in a proposed landscape. So that's basically what you're looking at as you're going down Federal Road. You're looking at a group of 3 flowering trees and a shade tree, maybe 2 flowering trees, 2 shade trees, a grouping of deciduous shrubs, a grouping of evergreen shrubs. It's meant to try to look as natural as possible.
If I may, just for clarification, even if they were 50 feet apart, you're talking trunk to trunk. That doesn't incorporate the canopy, which could be 25 feet.
That's correct. And if you notice on our landscape plan, in addition to the tree itself, there's a dashed circle around each individual plant. That is the actual spread at maturity. So when we place our trees, we take that into account so that we don't get a canopy growing into another canopy and shading out the understory underneath. So everything is taken into account.
Thank you. I was gonna ask about those circles. I thought that was an awful lot of mulch, but,
And it might be in the legend, if not, in the future we'll provide for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other questions, so unless you have something for...
I just had a comment,
One more.
if it's possible. I just want, again, this is just an open comment, I appreciate the thing. I just wanted to say that, you know, when we, at the zoning commission, this is primarily a comment for the public, we can only consider certain things when we're approving those things. That primarily revolves around the zoning regulations. That's really all we can consider when we do these things. I think someone in the audience had questioned school boards and children. Well, I think what they're referring to is impact assessments. We do not do that in this town. We don't, some communities, other communities do impact assessments. We do not, and we do not consider that as part of the approval process. The other thing I'd like to mention and be very clear on is the taxation in Brookfield. When an individual is taxed on their realty, they pay both a municipal and a school board component. So whether you like it or not, whether you have children or not, you pay school board taxes. And the higher the level of the house, the higher level it's assessed at, the more taxes you pay related to the schools. So we don't consider that as part of the approval process, the impact to the town. It'd be nice if we did in some certain instances, but we do not currently do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
in addition to that, when the school was in front of us, this commission 2-3 years ago, whenever it was, there was concern about have you future-proofed for larger populations, and they did. You know, they designed the building so it could be expanded easily to accommodate a larger school population.
Thank you, Mr. Timmerman.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good, always good to know the history
Yeah.
of the projects and different things that have come before the commission.
At this juncture, unless there's anything further, I would, as chair, entertain a motion to either continue the hearing or close it at this time. What is the pleasure?
Oh, did we do for and against already, or did we miss it?
We did it.
Oh, we did? Okay.
Remember, that's when you wanted to get your questions in?
Oh, is that this application?
Yeah, that's when it was.
That's right.
I make a motion to close public hearing for Z-22-54,
I would sec-
500A and 518 Federal Road.
Mrs. Holmes has made a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second that motion.
Ken
Chairman?
seconded the motion.
Yeah, I would suggest not closing the public hearing at this time, due to the fact it's still in front of wetlands.
Oh, okay, thank you. I withdraw my second.
Thank you for that.
I withdraw my
Helpful
proposal,
discussion.
my motion.
It may be a little premature for us to do so, so at this point, how about another motion maybe to continue this?
Well, then I would make a motion that regarding 500A and 518 Federal Road Z-22-54, that we continue the public hearing until the next meeting.
Our next meeting is October 27th. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Mrs. Holmes has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't specifically doing that to you. I just want to make people aware of the fact that we're limited in what we can do and can't do.
Okay. Item number 6, old business. Item A is an alpha, an update to the town of Brookfield zoning map to identify historic district, which was supposed to be completed by September 30th. I don't know if anyone present has any new information.
Mr. Chairman, I can speak on behalf of this. I was in the assessor's office today. I know Dawn from the assessor's office is still working with Mr. Donnelly and Jackie Salem from Historic. So that's process is still being worked on, I should say. So,
Sounds like it's getting due consideration.
It is.
Thank you.
Fran, do you want, I made a list of the 3 map changes that may or may not be on that map. I can just give it to you. That way you have it.
Sure.
I should have emailed it to you. Or I'll forward the email.
If you don't mind, could you send it to all of us? I'd like to
Oh,
see it
sure.
myself.
Yeah, you just take the current map and add these changes. Never mind.
Thank you. So, number 6, item B, land use zoning fee schedule. I don't know if there's an update available for that. Perhaps Mr. Kane.
Yes, I would like to indicate that we did include, or thankfully to the zoning office, that our zoning fee schedule was included. However, the additional schedules that we have from the other towns has not been forwarded to them, and that will be done. I think the important point here is that we take a look at our zoning fee schedule in relationship to the other towns and see what they're doing, so that we are neither are consistent to some extent with them. That has not been completed yet, and I would ask for continuance.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 7, new business. Item A, 1 Sandcut Road. Z-22-61 Tanner Michelli for BJG Sandcut LLC, Blue Jeans Golf LLC, 3333 Lee Parkway, Suite 460, Dallas, Texas. At this point, I'll accept a motion to set a date for the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the commission, I'd like to make a motion that we schedule a public hearing for item Z-22-61 for November 10th of 2022.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Pratt seconded Mr. Kane's motion. Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. There will be a hearing set for November 10th, 2022 for this matter. Other business proper, number 8. Zoning Commission 2023 draft calendar for approval. I had sent out an email relative to this, suggesting that we follow the tradition of the past and have one meeting only in July and one meeting only in August on the 4th Tuesday of the month, because things tend to slow down and a lot of people are absent due to vacations and such. Similarly it's listed as November 30th, but actually the 4th Thursday of November is actually the 23rd, and that would be Thanksgiving, so I was gonna ask that we eliminate that from our schedule as well. That would be the only change, other than a good recommendation was made by Mike, so also I think it's the 28th of December that we're scheduled to meet, and traditionally that one would also not take place, so with those changes, that would be my recommendation, if that's acceptable to the commission. We vote on it, make a motion for it, and we can
Good, and you know
settle
what,
that.
if we find that we have a lot of business, we can always add a meeting back in.
Good point.
You looking for a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that regarding the Zoning Commission 2023 calendar, that we limit our meetings in July to one meeting, and also one meeting in August, that the November 23rd Thanksgiving meeting be eliminated, and that our December 28th meeting be eliminated.
Do I have a second for that motion?
I second.
Mr. Komar seconds Mr. Kane's motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by nay. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you for that. Now, item number 9, tabled items, there are none. However, at this point, perhaps we would entertain the one case that we closed, one application, I should say, if we want to deliberate on that, or whatever the commission's pleasure is, if you'd like to carry it over to our next meeting, given that it's already 9:30. I don't know how people feel, but happy to hear what you think, folks.
Which, could you just refresh me again?
Starbucks.
Yeah, that was
128.
128 Federal Road, Z-22-53, the potential Starbucks location.
Well, if it pleases the commission, I have heard all the information. I think a lot of good questions were asked, that primarily concern traffic and safety. I think the property owner met the burden of making the property as effective as they possibly can concerning the traffic on Federal Road. I was actually impressed that from my opinion, or from my hearing of their information, that the traffic situation is not as bad as we thought. That didn't even include their mentioning of the fact that the right turn lane is almost complete down there. It's being currently under construction and should be completed within a 30-day period of time, well before they even start construction on that project. So, if it pleases the commission, I'd like to vote on this tonight if it's possible.
Any other
They went
discussion?
to- They went to the extra effort to actually take more traffic counts. That's money.
And again, it is, thank you, Mr. Timmerman, it is a state road, and there's a limited amount that we can actually mandate on that, and I think they've done all that they can do to make the traffic flow as smoothly as possible. I know I had mentioned in one of the earlier meetings that on how a Starbucks in Bethel does not have any traffic off a state road because they do it. They endeavored to do that, however, due to the wetlands, it's impossible for them to make the same type of traffic layout. However, they have done approximately 50% of that. So, to please the commission, I'd make a vote that we approve this.
So that's a motion?
I have a question, though. Are we still doing questions for commissioners, or deliberations?
I think we're right now entertaining the motion, so.
Oh, I
we
wasn't done.
can- we
I had a
can-
question about planning. Has the planning commission, what do they have to say about this project?
They're not involved in it.
They're not involved at all? It doesn't have to go before town planning?
No.
Okay.
I'm very sensitive to Commissioner Holmes's traffic issue. However, I've lived in Brookfield since 1985, and we're long past the traffic issue on Federal Road. There's really not much we can do about it at this point. And I think these folks have done all they absolutely positively can to do that. And in fact, the state has recognized that, and that's why that tremendous reorganization of Federal Road from, what is it, up to, what's the crossroad there? Where the
133.
where 133 is all the way down to Chick-fil-A and beyond, why that entire project is being done is to improve traffic flow there. So,
Old New Milford?
the Old New Milford Road, that turnaround area, the addition of the right turn lane all the way down Federal Road from there for the businesses. I think when that's complete, it will improve things dramatically. I know several lights are being added there to improve things. I don't see where there's much more that can be done to improve things.
May I say something?
Absolutely, yeah.
Tend to agree with Commissioner Holmes in that this is not just a Starbucks. It's 2 other stores. It's not just one store. So I think that's our concern. And we don't know what that is. What if it's an Apple store? What if it's, I don't know. What would generate a lot of traffic? That's my only concern.
They take that into account because they're considered, I think, light retail. They're not like like they said, like I think a Verizon store, that type of thing that doesn't have, it's probably far less than the coffee house statistic they use. They can only go by that because they don't know, I mean, I guess they're looking for a Verizon type thing, but there's not a guarantee of that.
I hear what you're saying, when people drive into those types of things, they go in there, they park for a period of time, 30 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it happens to be. I know when I've gone to the Apple store, if I could get out of there within an hour, I'd be happy, but I can't, so.
I think my husband was in a couple hours today.
I don't think, what I'm saying is, I don't think those two other
T-Mobile.
stores are gonna impact it. The primary problem, I think, that has been in that section of Federal Road has been the fast food type, drive-through type situations. And I think they've done all they can with respect to that.
Respectfully, Mr. Combe, I definitely see your points too, but I'm still of the bent that Federal Road is packed. It's getting F ratings on Saturdays. On Facebook, a friend of mine posted just this week about a bad accident that happened on Federal Road. So, not knowing the two other units and exactly what's gonna be in there definitely makes me not feel the warm fuzzies about the project. So they did get more counts, that was good. So I still feel that it's a safety issue for now. They don't have the left turning lane done. We don't know how much more traffic is gonna come through when the Amazon Fresh traffic starts over that way. Now we might get, you know, this project here that, Z2254, that we're saving, you know, those people that are gonna live in there. I mean, Federal Road is really getting packed. So I am concerned, but I'll leave that there.
Well, I hear you. My other concern is disparate treatment. We have approved, projects before people have built in their example, 450 Federal Road, there's 1, 2, 3 uncompleted units in there. It's still not determined who's gonna be going in there, yet we approved the project. So I'm not sure that that's, no matter what building you put in there, there will be traffic flow. That's the whole concept, I think, of commercial space, is that, you know, you build it and they come. So, I hear what you're saying about traffic on Federal Road, but as I say, Federal Road is,
Well, I hear what you're saying too.
It's
Once
now the Post Road North.
the
so.
gate's open, so I know, but it's like already bad on Saturdays. It's an F level. What's this gonna do to that? He couldn't say anything about that. It'll be F, double F, worse than F on Saturday with a Starbucks. People grabbing breakfast, people getting egg and cheese, people getting coffee, people using the two other retail shops. I just want to make sure that we're mindfully considering this before.
Thank you.
And to follow up.
If I may just, I thought we had a motion. Didn't you make a motion?
Yeah, I made a
Okay.
motion that
We never
we,
got to the point of seconding it. We're in
Right.
discussion about a motion that hasn't been seconded, but please.
well, I thought there was discussion before it, and then I made the motion possibly prematurely. So, just to restate the motion, I mean, my motion would be that we approve 128 Federal Road, application Z22-53, because the applicant has met all the filing standards and has answered all of our questions and has mitigated the traffic to the best that they possibly can for that property. Can they be responsible for all of Federal Road? Absolutely not. But for their particular property, I think they've done all they can to minimize impact on Federal Road, and that is why I would support their sharing Commissioner Holmes's concern about Federal Road, but as I say, they've done all they can to mitigate their portion of that.
And to Commissioner Kame's words, they meet the regulation, you know. And anybody who meets the regulation, you know, we're a rubber stamp committee. If they meet all the regulations, then we have no choice but to approve.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second for that motion?
I second.
Mr. Komar has seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion? If I may, I'll take a chairman's prerogative and only say that looking at the information provided by the applicant in this case, it looks to me like they've done more than normal due diligence, and based upon the comparison to other places that were recently opened, they're far better with their traffic management. So I do think it would be a little bit excessive to deny it, despite the fact that the Connecticut Department of Transportation already has approved what they've submitted, as well as all the work that they've done trying to accommodate our many questions. But that's just mine. At that, I would defer to Ms. Hodson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to reiterate and highlight some of the things that the commission at various times during the evening have observed and have said. First of all, yes, indeed, this is a state issue. The state has approved, just as Mr. Chairman Getzis has said. That is their purview. The commission cannot rule on a future possibility. That's not, we can't take that into consideration, what somebody else might do later on. And the final thing I'd like to say is that in the absence of our own experts, the commission is to rely on the experts that have presented here tonight. And so we did hear from the traffic engineer, who is in this case the expert. But I think you're all, raising precisely the points that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we call the vote? Well, motion has been made, it has been seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
And are there any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
By the way, thank you for doing
You're welcome, it's our pleasure. Next up, item number 10, informal discussion. I don't know if anyone has anything to add. I have nothing at this point. Ms. Hodson, please.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to announce that you all do have a new administrative assistant. She started on Tuesday. Her name is Amy Curran. We took her away from the police department. She was dispatcher there and a few things. But she will be working for me and for them if we can. Anyway, I hope you'll all welcome Amy Curran. If you get emails from her, you'll know who she is. She's at your disposal.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, good luck.
Next up, item number 11.
One last thing.
Please, please.
In reference to, traffic and anything we don't like about what we allow, that's what bringing forward, changes to the zoning regulations, usually driven by the plan of conservation development by planning. But regular citizens can band together and say, you know what, we don't like all this development, or we want something different about traffic or something. The vehicle is put a zoning reg change in.
Sure, you make a great point. That's kind of what informs my thinking and philosophy, is that I try to respect precedent and be very careful about making changes to things, because that establishes a new precedent. And I think it would be difficult for us to defend being really strict with somebody, because somebody has this urge about traffic or school, but we allowed this much relaxed standard for everyone else up until a year ago. kind
Yeah,
of thing.
Are we on item 12?
We are on item number 12, adjournment. I'm sure that you guys want to keep going, but. does
Motion to
anyone-
adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second that one.
Mrs. Holmes would like to stay. She's not going to second that.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none.